Hello and welcome to Wednesday Debate Live with Taghreed Hussein here on Nile TV International. Tonight we'll be discussing the current headlines and talking about a very interesting topic, religious institutions' role in promoting Egypt's foreign policy. As we all know that the current regional and international circumstances have given a vivid proof that President Sisi had led the new republic's foreign policy over the past years on balanced basis that have caused an activation of Egypt's international relations with all the different countries all over the world. So we can see this sense of diversity through reading in the new republic and today regionally, continentally and internationally, along with the significant presidential visits worldwide. It is definitely obvious that the state stands as a holder of a very important key talking regional vis-a-vis regional and international issues. Thinking about the most significant current issues in international relations, definitely it's impossible to ignore the remarkable role that has been played by the religious institutions in order to establish peace worldwide, and the active role of the faith leaders in politics, in conflict resolution, and also in peace building. So religious diplomacy has been playing a very important role on the regional and also on the international fronts, joining hands with the country's foreign policy and seeking common interests, common grounds, working hand in hand, engaging in a dynamically and a changing and turbulent world of today. Well, throughout this episode, we'll be discussing more about this role and vis-a-vis the top stories. It has been the headline throughout the day, the president arriving in Paris to participate in the new Global Finance Pact. The president arrived in the French capital, Paris, to participate in the international summit, the new Global Finance Pact that will be held on the 22nd and on the 23rd of June. The official spokesperson for the presidency stated that President Sisi's participation in this important event comes in response to the invitation of French President Macron, and this in light of the close and growing strategic relations that binds both countries, Egypt and France, as well as Egypt's active role in the emerging economies in general, in a way that contributes to strengthening international relations and support and develop at least developed countries. The spokesman for the presidency stated that President Sisi intends to focus during the Paris summit on issues of concern to developing countries regarding the importance of strengthening international efforts to facilitate their access to financial flows in light of the escalating global crisis. We're really honored to have with us here on Nile TV International and discussing this important topic tonight, as well as reading the headlines, Dr. Hossam Allam, researcher in international relations. Dr. Allam, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you so much for having me. Always a pleasure.
Thank you. Well, starting as we've seen the top stories of the day, His Excellency, the President, arriving in France, and those important protocol presidential visits definitely contribute to further promoting our relations with the outside world. We have very strong relations with France, and this time comes the President's participation in the new Global Finance Pact, and the timing actually of this summit being held is very important.
Definitely it is, and I really appreciate the report and how it highlighted briefly and to the point the importance of the summit. Definitely this, I think, is reflective of the importance of Egypt, that it's a regional power to be reckoned with, and the formation of any meaningful alliance, be it on a political level or on an economic one, definitely cannot do away with the presence of Egypt. And I do think that all these efforts and endeavors taken by the Egyptian state is definitely one that all of these efforts, they come out of recognizing the responsibility that Egypt shoulders, be it towards its own people or towards its regional and global allies as well.
Yes, emanating from this important sense of responsibility and responsible role.
Yes.
We're discussing actually today, as we can see more on the President's visit to France. It will include holding meetings with a number of senior French and international leaders as well, and officials, and those are always eye to eye, seeing eye to eye on advancing bilateral cooperation frameworks, also consultations with regional and international powers, focusing on the need to support the developing countries at this important juncture, and also reflecting, Dr. Allam, also on Egypt's Vision 2030. So the significance of the timing and the topics, and also reading into the different challenges that happens in the world today.
Yes, if we look into the current stage globally, given what has been unfolding, if we take it like the scope of the corona pandemic and its repercussions and ramifications, followed by the Russia-Ukraine conflict, if we look at this and then the economic challenges worldwide, the economic recession, definitely the timing is a very important factor here in understanding the bigger picture of the need to form new alliances, new forms of cooperation, of international cooperations, and this is definitely a much needed sort of international activity in order for all countries to have the capacity in order to face and to encounter all of these challenges.
Yeah, a short break. We'll be moving to prayers time announcement, and we'll be back. Welcome back, and we still have with us our distinctive guest for tonight, Dr. Hossam Allam, international relations researcher, and we are still discussing the role of religious institutions in promoting peace and international relations. Definitely a very interesting topic, how they play a very important role in establishing peace. Let's see this report, and we will be back further to discuss this in a very interesting topic. Stay tuned.
Foreign policy is an essential component of Egypt's general state policy, together with its traditional diplomatic as well as the state's religious institutions. The Egyptian foreign relations participate in the country's development on several levels. Through Egypt's religious institutions, the state's foreign diplomacy also seeks to maintain strong bilateral and multilateral relations, which is another essential goal of Egypt's general policy, as strengthening traditional friendly relations and building new relations enable the country to exercise influence and pursue its national interests all over the globe. In Egypt, the role of religious institutions in promoting international relations was made clear through the several steps taken by Egypt's religious leaders in promoting peace and friendly relations between states. The remarkable role of religious institutions is significant at the time the world is witnessing unending quarrels, fights and wars, with the war in Ukraine entering its second year and the latest situation in Sudan. Egypt's Mufti, Allam, President of the Supreme Council of the General Secretariat for Fatwa Authorities Worldwide, took part in Forum for Building Bridges Between East and West that was held this June at the Trusteeship Council Chamber, United Nations headquarters in New York, with this visit as part of the foreign tours made by the Iftar House to hold religious interactions with other states. In the same regard, the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, Ahmad al-Tayyib, and the head of the Roman Catholic Church, Pope Francis, received an official invitation from the United Nations Security Council to each deliver a historic speech during its meeting this June. In their speech, both religious leaders called for human fraternity. Citing Iraq, Afghanistan, Syria, Libya, and Yemen, the Grand Imam of Al-Azhar, Ahmad al-Tayyib, called for an end to senseless wars and alluded to the Ukraine conflict as a threat of humanity, stressing that political leaders must take up the call to fraternity. Also, the remarkable role played by religious institutions and leaders in fostering foreign relations was made clear through the visit of Pope Theodorus II, head of the Coptic Orthodox Church, to Rome, marking the 50th anniversary of the historic joint Christological declaration signed between the heads of the Coptic Orthodox and Roman Catholic churches in 1973. In that historic meeting, both Pope Theodorus II and Pope Francis prayed for peace and an end to all wars and crises affecting humanity. Symbols of reconciliation from religious leaders in the midst of war and economic crises are very vital, stressing the crucial role of religious institutions in promoting foreign relations and fostering world peace.
So we're talking international relations vis-a-vis the role of religious diplomacy in promoting international relations. As we've seen, it has been obvious in the report that it further builds this sense of bridges of understanding and trust.
True. Yes.
Yeah. So talking about that important role in reserving also the pressing international issues there.
Yes, so this is very important, and let me build on this very interesting report and share a couple of very simple facts when it comes to the notions of diplomacy, faith-based diplomacy, and peace building. In very simple terms, diplomacy is originally derived via French from the ancient Greek diploma, which means folded into two, and then we have the term diplomat. It means the object that is folded into two, and here it refers to the document that is usually conferred or issued by a head of state or a sovereign in order to confer the privilege of being able to come to a particular place or a sovereign territory. Later on, the term developed and it came more to reflect the meaning of the person authorized to negotiate and to act in peaceful activities on behalf of a sovereign entity. Later on, diplomacy became more associated with international relations and politics, because it is known that international relations is derived from politics, and diplomacy in turn is derived from international relations. With that being said, moving into a more specific concept that has to do with diplomacy, and that's faith-based diplomacy or religious diplomacy. Let me start by stating that overall diplomacy tends to be perceived as the peaceful management of international relations with activities that are permitted by peace, and this is why we mainly have dialogue and negotiations, as well as all the necessary means in order to, of course, the peaceful ones that have to do with achieving reconciliation. So with that being said, and looking more in depth into the concept of faith-based diplomacy, we actually mean, and this is very obvious in the IR literature, when we speak of faith-based diplomacy or religious diplomacy, if you like, we are referring to the incorporation of faith-related affairs and concerns into the practice of international relations and politics overall. So to put it more simply, we mean here by faith-based diplomacy, and the aim is to make faith part of the solution, usually to the most intricate and identity-based and related conflicts, that the solution of which, or resolving which, usually is out of the grasp of traditional means of diplomacy or conventional means of diplomacy. And this is why, and it's very interesting in this regard to share that we have actually within the academic literature voices of both academic researchers and foreign policy makers who tend to agree on the understanding that still in the 21st century, faith and faith-based leaders or religious figures still tend to play a significant role in shaping people's views and stances, especially when you are talking about internal conflicts or even international ones. And this is why you have, for example, the very prominent late diplomat, Dr. Boutros Ghali. Yeah. He has actually made it clear that the incorporation of the role of faith-based institutions and faith-based actors is very crucial in many instances in solving internal conflicts and international ones. And we can cite many examples here. We have, for example, the example of Northern Ireland, the example of Mozambique, the example of South Africa, and many other examples in this regard academically. So what I'm trying to say here is definitely the Egyptian state seems to be aware of the importance of incorporating faith-based diplomacy in its foreign policy overall, and in return, the faith-based institutions in Egypt, they actually seem to be aware of the huge responsibility that is laid on their shoulders, be it here the Egyptian church and its glorious history as one of the oldest churches in the world, as well as Al-Azhar with its glorious history as well, and the very prominent role being played by Egypt's Dar al-Ifta. So definitely this is all what has been mentioned in the report, all these global visits, is very reflective of this crucial role being played. And also when we see these official invitations being sent to these very patriotic and effective Egyptian faith-based institutions, this is very reflective of the crucial role that they have been playing, and this recognition of worldwide entities and organizations of the importance of including the voice of these faith-based institutions, be it Al-Azhar or the Church or Dar al-Ifta, in the global and worldwide dialogue when it comes to countering violent extremism, when it comes to countering hate speech, and of course, when it comes to finding solutions to the very pressing issue nowadays, which is the climate change.
Yes, from this important file to also helping the youth and empowering the youth in order to seek this sense of dialogue also.
Yes.
Preparing the youth for leadership has been actually one of the most important priorities of the new republic with His Excellency President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi.
Yes.
As you know, Dr. Allam, believing in the youth as Egypt's treasure.
Yes.
And we recently followed up the news coming from the Nasser Fellowship for International Leadership
That's
that has actually been very powerful in garnering like more than 150 youth leaders from 60 countries coming to Egypt, and well, each one of them is like an ambassador for his or her
very
country.
true. Yes.
So how was the vibes? And I guess that it was definitely a privilege that you were among this important fellowship.
Yes, this is definitely something very worthwhile to mention here, and thank you so much for bringing this up and bringing this into the overall topic that we are talking about when it comes to diplomacy overall and the efforts of the Egyptian state in promoting youth leadership, because here this is also very relevant to a very significant form of diplomacy, which is youth diplomacy in particular and public diplomacy overall, because for the very simple reason that you have to the point mentioned, and that's each one of these delegates or these youth, they actually act as an ambassador for their country. And I really would like to here really praise the efforts of the Ministry of Youth and Sports, headed currently by Dr. Ashraf Sobhi, because they also made sure that they would invite the official ambassadors of the respective countries of the participants, of the young people, I mean, participating in the Nasser Fellowship for International Leadership, to come and to be part of the graduation ceremony or the closing ceremony. So this adds this further official dimension to the significance of this fellowship. Definitely it is an effective tool of Egypt's foreign diplomacy, so that it can emphasize on one of the prominent principles in Egypt's foreign policy, and that's being neutral and also being respective of the sovereignty and the internal affairs of all countries worldwide, i.e. here I'm referring in particular to the non-aligned movement, which was definitely established, among others, by one of Egypt's prominent recent heads of state, and that's the late President Gamal Abdel Nasser. So for the Egyptian state to be carrying out all of this, extending this opportunity for young people, be they from the south or from other countries worldwide, this is definitely reflective of a clear vision that Egypt has, because we can definitely cite, for example, here also the World Youth Forum and the messages that have been coming out from the Egyptian state in this platform. I do think that they are very powerful and they are very meaningful, and they actually do reflect what young people worldwide tend to really agree on when it comes to building bridges of peace, building bridges of understanding that go both ways, based on mutual respect and mutual understanding, when it comes to finding a peaceful solution to the pressing issues facing humanity nowadays, when it comes to the challenge of refugees, when it comes to the challenge of modern day slavery and illegal human trafficking with all its forms, and when it comes also to the climate challenges, and connecting all of this with the SDGs, or the Sustainable Development Goals set by the United Nations in this regard, along with the very promising and very bright agenda that Egypt has set as its vision for 2030. I do think that all of these come to convey a very clear message that Egypt has always been playing an effective role regionally, continentally, and worldwide. And Egypt knows, given its historic importance and given its geographical significance, that it has a role to play. It has a say to clearly convey, and that it will always maintain this peace-building role as reflected by its institutions. And I would like here to mention how is it Egypt, in spite of all of the challenges that it has been facing, still it has been able to provide a bright example of institution building and sharing this experience with the rest of the world.
Yes, it was actually a very much clear message,
Yes.
conveying more than one message, as you've mentioned, Dr. Allam. Also, it was great to see this sense of diversity, messages
Very
also
true.
from African youth.
Yes,
That
yes.
has been very interesting
Very
in
true.
that respect. The role of the youth in building their societies
Very
further,
true, yes.
empowering the youth to be part and parcel of the decision-making process
Very true, yes.
is very important. Today here in Egypt, we do have also the role played by the National Training Academy
Very true, yes.
in that respect,
Yes.
and how it actually prepares the youth for leadership. What does it take to have youth as future leaders, responsible leaders, very much quite efficient to lead? What does it take? How are we preparing them for that mission?
I do think that the very first thing that it requires is the recognition of the importance of the potential role of young people, and secondly is providing the right and conducive environment that would serve as an environment to nurture the solution and the answer to all the requirements and to all the needs of young people, so that they are, on one hand, safeguarded and immune to all attempts of taking them away, or I mean here more clearly, all the efforts by some extremist groups to radicalize and to recruit young people. So this safeguarding dimension is very important. And the second one is the one that has to do here with empowerment. That young people, of course, are full of energy, they have a great potential. So providing them with the clear and the legitimate means to be part of all the dimensions of social life, be it a political one, be it a social reform one if needed, be it has to do with justice. All this is very significant, and I'd like here to cite also a very bright example that Egypt now is witnessing and is working on, and this also was part of the points that were shared during the Nasser Fellowship for International Leadership, and that's the national dialogue that is now taking place in Egypt. This attempt to provide a healthy and conducive platform for all voices within the Egyptian social fabric is very important, is very significant, and it is worth highlighting, because also it provides a clear example of the determination of the Egyptian state to overcome the challenges that we have seen, how they have dramatically and drastically affected other countries worldwide. So this is reflective of a clear determination on the part of the Egyptian state, taken by its official institutions, to provide, as I always describe, the conducive environment for taking the whole country forward.
Yes, definitely. And I thank you so much,
My
Dr.
pleasure.
Hossam Allam, researcher in international relations.
My pleasure.
Tonight, it has been a very fruitful discussion, discussing more about the leading role of the religious institutions in building peace and in international relations, and also leading to the leading role of the youth today, empowering youth, and that important Nasser Fellowship for international leadership that
Yes.
sent many messages
Yes.
of hope, of youth strength, of how tomorrow is going to be brighter.
Yes.
And what was really very interesting about it is that all those messages came from the land of the pharaohs.
Yes, very true. And thank you so much for having me. Always
Thank
a pleasure.
you.
My
Thank
pleasure.
you. And I thank you, dear viewers, for joining us. And I'm Tagharit Hussein. Many thanks for watching.